Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. This is Her Story, and my name is Carlton Scovia Nakamia, your host. We all know, possibly some of you know, Dr.Miria Matembe. She likes calling herself has seen it all. She's a senior citizen, and she's so much into women rights activism. So we want to understand what's the story behind this activism. Dr.Miria Matembe, thank you very much for joining me. What motivated your struggle for equality as a young woman?
It is written in that book, and it is also written here. As a young girl, I come from a village of Wizwera, and I was born to peasants. The peasants who didn't have sufficiency, who didn't have enough. But those days there was pride, people loved themselves, there were ethical values, there was integrity. So even peasants lived a sensible life. They were satisfied with what they had. So as I lived that life, we were born 9 children, 5 boys and 4 girls. And good enough, my father was wise enough. He loved education, so he put all of us to school. And the reason why I'm saying my father was wise enough is because I know that time my mother's voice did not matter, because women were not participating in decision making to influence the decisions of homes. That is the beginning of my struggle. So as we were going to school, I used to experience discrimination between my brother and I. Whenever we got to school and the school fees are not sufficient, they would chase us back home. But whenever we returned home, my brother's school fees would be found in a short time, 2 or 3 days, but it would take me a week or 2 or 3 for my fees to be found. And as a little girl, I was wondering why me I'm not finding school fees, and for him he's getting his school fees. As if that was not enough. My mother was a born-again Christian, and she was a woman leader, Mothers Union. So in the many afternoons, they used to go for meetings, like on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon, or you could go to a market. But every time the afternoon she would be occupied, I would not go to school that afternoon because I had to keep my siblings. But my brother would go to school. Now as I grew up, I said, but why? I was asking not loudly, because those days what right did they have? Children did not have any right. You did what your parents told you. I was not questioning anybody, but in my mind, it was burning, it was killing me. Why am I being treated like this? And as I became like 5, 6 years or 7, then I used to see some women come home to talk with my mother. And they would be discussing, you are a young kid, but you are near here, you are hearing, they are discussing, the husband beat them, they chased them, and they would be crying, and my mother at times would cry with them, and they tried to give them, to counsel them and give advice. Violence. And that also added on my question, why are these women suffering? And then eventually I think about 8 years, I used to have an aunt, a sister of my father. I think he was married to a man who was a vagabond. He used to go and to work as a porter. They would in Uganda. They say he's gone to Uganda. Uganda for us was very, very far. And he used to go to work in Uganda as a porter or something like this. And the woman would stay home and take care of the children and alone without this man. After some months, the man would come back. Moreover, bringing nothing, no dress, no money, no what. In fact, my father is the one who was paying school fees for those children. And he would come just like that with nothing, drunko. And then after about how many days, he would beat my aunt and batter her. And my aunt would run home to take refuge in her brother's home. And after she would be welcome. But after about 2 or 3 days, I would see my father now turning guns to her. You woman, useless woman, that's why your husband chased you away. Go back to your home. You are useless. And then I would hear my aunt saying, I'm not useless. I produced boys for that man. Can you imagine that answer? I produced boys for that man. I'm not useless. I brought cows, bride price. Then in my mind I said, but this woman, she produced girls also. Why is she saying she produced boys for this man? And I would say, but isn't it her children? Why is it producing for that man? And then bride price. Then I said, hey, and eventually, by the time I was 9, I came to learn that those are women. Women are treated like that. They are not treated like full human beings. That their value comes from producing sons. If you produce only girls, then you have not produced. If you produce, even if there are many boys, but one girl or what, they say you have not produced. And you know the language they were using, so and so did not produce children. She has only girls. You know, in Runyankore they say so and so hasn't produced children. He has only 2 girls. That means he has not produced. You know, it was scratching me, and I said, but what is this? Then I came to learn that, you know, that's how women are treated. They can only have value attached to bride price, which they are sold off. They can only have value when they produce sons. And here I was, a girl, so I'm useless. That's why they don't pay school fees for me quickly. That's why I don't go to school quickly. Then I developed this idea. Now, how is this situation going to be solved? Then in the meantime, I came to learn. I think somebody at the village was killed. Those days, murder was not like it is a joke now. For in the whole village or whole county, if only one murder was done, it was a big thing, and people would gather around and, you know, say, what is this? They were discussing, and you know, they are like, hey, this calamity has befallen us, and that kind of thing. And then some people were discussing and saying, she will buy a pleader. This one will get a pleader.
A lawyer.
A pleader. They were using the word pleader.
Okay.
He would get a pleader. I said, who is a pleader? They say a pleader is the one who pleads for people like criminals. He will plead for them. He will urge for them. I said, hey, pleader, I would like to plead for women. So they said, so what does the pleader have to do? They said the pleader studies law and he becomes a lawyer.
Okay.
I say, so by 9 years, I had made up my mind that when I grow up, I will become a pleader. I will study law and I will plead for women.
To defend their rights.
Plead for them so that they are also treated as human beings. I studied, let me tell you, irrespective of the fact that I was not going to school all the time. I studied so hard. And this brother of mine, I caught up with him in P6 because he repeated P6. So I caught up with him. We studied P6 together. So we went to P7. When we reached P7, we did exams. And I passed in first grade. And he got second grade. And those days, because secondary schools were very few, there were no private schools, it was only government secondary schools, and they were very few and they were very far, like Wera Nyanji, Mere Hirombara High School and that kind of thing. And me, I was with Wera Village. When I passed to go to senior 1, my brother did not pass to go to senior 2, to go to senior 1. So guess what? I went to senior 1 and he repeated. This is somebody who is brilliant. All the time he's getting fees. I went to senior 1, he repeated in P7. And in the meantime, can you imagine, my mother repented to me. She confessed. She said, you know what, when these two, when we were in P7, both of us, they knew they could not get school fees for 2 children in senior secondary school. So she said that she was praying that God, at least if only one passes, he was praying that maybe one could pass, but if that one who passes should be the boy. Imagine, so a woman, my mother, praying that it should be the boy who passes. She confessed, she said, Mwana wange, forgive me. I was praying that he passes. But now, since you are the one who has passed, thank God you have passed. So they took me to Wera Nyanji. I went to senior 1. Then went to senior 2. When I had joined senior 2, my brother passed in first grade to go to senior 1. Guess what happened? They sent, my mother came to Weranyanji secondary school to ask the mistress that he should take me back home, withdraw me from secondary school and take me to Kakoba Teaching College, because Kakoba was a teaching college to teach teachers for primary school. So I should go, leave senior and leave space, school fees for my brother, because he's a boy, to continue with senior education, and for me, I should go to learn teacher training. Remember, I had made up my mind to study law. Now they want to kill my dream of becoming a lawyer. And you can imagine, he's a child who has already shown signs of success, who has already beaten challenges of missing classes but doing very well. And she's now in senior 2. And you want to withdraw her to give space for the man who had not shown you any sign of intelligence and doing better. And let me tell you, to cut the story short, that brother of mine, of course, continued, and he ended up with senior 4. And after senior 4, he did not pass to go to HSC. He went for technical training in electricity. And by the time he died, of course, he was an electrician. And for me, whom they wanted to withdraw, I refused. I said, no, Miss Ho, I want to go and look for bursary. I had heard that poor people and orphans get bursary. So I asked the headmistress, where can I get bursary? He said, Mbarara Chief Education Officer gives bursary. I'm 14 years then. I was 14 years. And in my Kasmoro uniform, I told my mother, you take me to the Chief Education Officer. Do you know the place? He said, yeah, I can find it, but unfortunately, I can't speak English. I said, don't worry. You take me there, you'll go and speak English. And to cut the story short, of course, she took me there. We sat at the office for the whole hour up to lunchtime. We didn't know how you enter. We didn't know procedures. But when the man was walking out of his office accompanying the last guest, he said, woman, what can I do for you? I stood up. I said, sir, I want fees. I want fees, sir. I started telling my story. I started crying. And the man said goodbye to his guest and took me inside and my mother. So I told the whole story of how they are unfair, how they are cheating me, how I want bursary. So this woman said, you know, the man, he was actually Mawata. He was a Musoga man, is called Mawata. And as God, you know, God does miracles. Do you know that the daughter of that man, over by God's grace, married my uncle? So I have cousins of that man. And in fact, when I told my story and the daughter said, but that is my father, hey, I bought shoes. I bought a pair of shoes and sent to that man. But of course, me after 14 years, or when I was 14 years, after he had given me bursary, I never knew of him again. I never heard of him again until now we married his daughter and I came to learn that he was the one. So by then there was no corruption, no bribe, no what. After telling my story,
He gave you a chance.
This man said, you go home, go back to school. I told my mother, this man has said, you go back home, me, I go back to school. So I go back to Weranyanji. He said, we shall get in touch. Which is your school? I said, Weranyanji headmistress. And within a week, the headmistress called me now, this time to give me good news. To Miss Koburunga, you have got bursary. So I got bursary. In fact, whenever I remember that story, I become emotional. Because there are so many girls who could have been me, but they didn't get opportunity like that. You can imagine if I had become just a teacher trainer, just a primary teacher, I would have maybe finished and married at the age of 15, 16 or 18, and maybe I would have produced so many children. Maybe I would have died by then. Would I be me, Matembe, here, Miria Matembe, from that place to have the influence I have had on the African platform, on the world platform, the influence that Lord has made me have. There are so many girls who have missed that. But thank God who gave me favor. Do you know why I love God so much? I don't just want to bore you with God, but I believe God chose me in this world for a purpose. To fight against injustice, to fight, to resist. In fact, me, I tell people, when you saw me resisting the injustices, in fact, when NRM came here and it was called resistance, oh, how I loved the name. Because I grew up as a resistant child, resisting injustice, resisting discrimination, resisting. Up to now, I resist. That's why up to now, I resist everything wrong.
Could you give a message to women who might be feeling their dreams shattered right now?
Let me tell you, one thing I proved from my experience is that once you have a dream, the biggest problem is not having a dream. But once you have a dream and you have passion, you are passionate to your dream and you are clear about your dream and your dream is not about yourself. That is one thing I must clarify. That dream is a vision. A vision is something which is not about yourself. A vision is something which is for the good of others. Once that's the type of dream you have, don't worry. It may meet challenges. It may meet dream stealers. I met a number of dream stealers. The first dream stealers were my parents. I resisted. I think the next dream stealers were whoever they were there. My father, again, when I got to HS and I wanted to study law, he said, not in my house, on my dead body, you can't study law. He said, you are not going to study law, you will go and study teaching or nursing. And I had to resist that. And I managed to study law. He almost killed my dream. I overcame him. And so when you have, and then I had other challenges. I remember there is one man after HSC when I didn't get called immediately. He's a big man. He was a friend of my father. And then, and then my father sent him there. Well, a big man, a lawyer. He sent him there to help me get a place in HSC. And after I had got that place, that big man wanted to rape me. You know, do you call it rape or sexual abuse? After, when I went with the news, tell him that I have got a letter to take me to Namasagari College to study HSC, and he was saying goodbye to me. He wanted to rape me. I tell you, I was going to open the door to go out. He pulled me and he started opening his zip. And I cried. I said, oh, God, what did I do to you? Now I had managed to get a place. Now this man wants to get me pregnant and I can't study law. The man was so shaken off and he shook off and he gave me a white handkerchief the first time to get a beautiful, dignified handkerchief. He pulled his handkerchief from his pocket and rubbed off my tears and said, please don't mention it to your father. That was about to kill my dream. So there are challenges there. I tell you, I have stories. When you have a dream and God is on your side, because of course a dream comes from God. When you have that dream, you will meet many attempted killers of dreamers. Even Joseph, they wanted to kill his dream, but eventually didn't he become the prime minister of Egypt? So once you have that dream, and you know it is a dream, and it is for the good of others, just be passionate. Just pursue that dream. Don't give up. I'm telling you, I could have given up many times. I could even have given up the dream of being a parliamentarian. When 1980, when Obote came, when Amin was there, when Obote came, I could have given up. But all these challenges came, attempted dream killers, but because of the passion and God being on your side, you will always realize your dream. I can assure you, women, don't fear. Stand up. And I always want to go and talk to women and, encourage them and empower them. When God is on your side and you have a clear dream and you are focused on it, dream killers will not manage you.
So when and how did you join the struggle for freedom?
The struggle for freedom. My struggle for freedom and democracy a long struggle, like a childhood struggle. Because as I grew up as a young child, I saw injustice. You know, the struggle for freedom and democracy is about justice and fairness. So I lived a life through a child life of injustice, discrimination, and unfairness. And that put in me the spirit to fight against injustice, discrimination, and unfairness, especially against girl child and women. So this struggle is the one which eventually led me into the political arena. Because as I lived my life, I wanted to struggle and ensure that women are treated as much as equal human beings as their counterpart, the men. And of course, I lived in a life which was, when I grew up, of course, that's what led me to studying law, because I wanted to know what the law talks about this injustice. And eventually, as I went further in my studies, I came to learn that laws are made in parliament, and so I developed this dream of one day becoming a parliamentarian and fighting and making the laws that would create justice and fairness. But of course, when by the time I finished my law course, we were already in dictatorship. At the political level, national level, there was no democracy. There was, but I can't imagine. There was no democracy. There was just dictatorship over men. By the time I finished my education as a lawyer, Amin was the one in power. So I couldn't go to politics. I went teaching and that kind of thing. I'm summarizing for you. Since everything is recorded in this book, you'll know how the struggle went. And then eventually, of course, I went to teach, but eventually when Obote came back, I nurtured this whole idea of wanting to go to politics, but eventually it was short-lived because the politics were very, very dirty, murderous, and that kind of thing. I could not take it. And so I went back in my hibernation there, doing the work of lecture and so on, until eventually President Museveni came. I personally did not go in the bush, but my brothers, my uncles, my relatives, they went to the bush. I'll tell you, I feared the bush. I must be honest. I had married. I had my small babies, and how I couldn't run away.
You had to protect them.
I wouldn't go to the bush and leave them. I knew the bush was there because my brothers, my uncle, they all went. Uncle Kazora, my brother Kano Ryangombe, Dayazi, some of them died, some of them are still alive. So they went there. So I was expecting them to come back. So when they came back, I looked, and some of them were very young. They challenged me very much, very seriously. Like this, my uncle John Kazor. I am many years older than him, but he returned here as a hero. They used to be special district administrators, David Yangombe. When I saw them, they were heroes. I said, my goodness, what am I doing here? I must embrace this struggle. So, and good enough, what was so good about this struggle is that whereas I had been looking for a platform where I would stand and challenge the discrimination and injustice against women, this now NRM, the National Resistance Movement, the original one, the one I know, not this fake party, but the original one. This party is fake. It is not the original one. Doesn't have the vision and the mission that took those people to the bush. They diverted it long ago. But the original one came now with my favor to me, because they came with the whole question of woman agenda high up on the platform. I've been looking for a platform to shout and challenge inequalities and injustice against women. And what does the National Resistance Movement do? It comes with that platform. And it said, where are you women come? The moment I heard that, I started straight away from RC. We used to call them RC. Resistance Council. From RC1 here up to the district level. So that's how I joined. From RC1, I was a general secretary for LC1. Then when was it? Was it 19? 88, I think so, 1987, 98. No, they came 86. So I was LC1, a secretary, then eventually I became secretary for Women's Affairs, RC2. Then I became the first woman actually to take an RC position, which was not a women position. I became the vice chairperson of Nakawa division. See this Nakawa division? I was the vice chairperson of the whole division. And then eventually I went to Kampala district and I became the secretary for mass mobilization and education, Kampala district. And that's what gave me the widest platform in Kampala district I could go. We had 7 divisions. Makerere, University and Chambogo were considered as divisions, and then Machinde, Rubaga, Nakawa here, you know, I went everywhere. And with that platform, I was able to reach every district. I was firebrand. It was fire. For me, when I got up onto the public platform, it's like when you open a gate for a dog which has been there wanting to bite. I got out all this childhood since I was 9 years, what I had desired, what I had dreamed of, a platform to stand on and challenge injustices and fairness and discrimination had come. So I embraced it wholesale. I wrote a book called my autobiography, Miria Matembe, Gender, Constitution, Gender, what was it called? And Constitution Making, Politics, Gender, and Constitution Making in Uganda. I tell the whole of that story. My activism, how it went fire. I was unstoppable, I can assure you. So that's why you see me up to where I am. I'm even up to now, I'm unstoppable. So I joined the struggle, and eventually there was extension of parliament in 1989, and the people of Mbarara called me because I had been to Mbarara to talk. I had been to Mubenda, I had been to Musaka, I had been to Lida, I've been to everywhere. Imagine, just as Secretary for Women's Affairs. But because I had dreamt, I had a dream. Let me tell you, I tell young people, without a dream, even the Bible says my people perish without a vision. So you must have a dream. This dream of mine is the one which carried me up to now. And even now when I'm out of any job, anything at all, I am still there. Because let me tell you, even I think Martin Luther says that a leader's passion to pursue his vision does not depend, a leader's to pursue your vision does not depend on position, but on your passion for your vision. So that's why up to now, I'm still fighting for justice, equality, and democracy, and freedom of the people. So that's how I joined the struggle, and I worked. Then eventually in 1989, I was appointed to the Uganda Constitutional Commission, one of the 2 women, me and Mary Maitum. We were 21 people, but I tell you, I used that platform to ensure that the question, the gender question, the women's rights had to be entrenched in the Constitution of Uganda. I document all these experiences, and as you know, they are finally also documented. The first experience was actually the first autobiography, is my experience in the struggle for gender equality, the constitution making, and so on and so forth. But by that time, I ended even writing that book, I had already developed my doubts about the ability of the NRM government to really give full human rights and freedom, because they had already been denying us the women's rights by failure to implement the constitutional provisions and to make laws that would give us land, that would do that kind of thing. Now this book here, what I document here is now my journey.
Your memoir.
My journey in the political arena, how I embraced politics, how we worked, how I saw things changed, how I saw evil in politics, how I saw betrayal, how I saw greed, how I saw all those evils that were existing in the past government. I saw them in this government. So by the time I left, it was cry, my beloved country. Because when I embraced NRM, to be honest, tell you the truth, and that's why I'm affected the way I'm affected. That's why many people say Matembe is so angry, she's so bitter. They can describe me in any way, but for me it is my passion for freedom of African people, my passion for freedom of women, my passion for liberation of women to be treated as full human beings. And when I embraced NRM, I thought that now, never again shall we have to replace a government through guns. Never again shall we go in battles and fight and suffer rapes, torture, brutality by military and by police. Never again. Do you know why I was thinking like that? No. You know, during those times of Amin and Obote government, this kind of indoctrination, you know, for you when you are young, there is this government, they used to tell us, these people from the north, the northerners, they are bad, they are killers. After all, they are not educated, they are ignorant, and they are inhuman, they are very bad. That is what was indoctrinated in our minds, at least in my mind. And so, one government after another, Amin goes, Obote comes, they are the northerners, they are the same, they are doing the same thing.
Tribalism.
They are doing the same thing. I think biases, whatever indoctrination they give. For instance, I want to tell you right now that people from the north, or those in the village, or those even in Uganda here, all of you are saying these Banyankore are bad. They are saying these Banyankore are evil. Aren't they saying it? They are saying it. Yes, they are saying it. And so that's why now the other people were saying, telling us that they know the whatever are bad. And you get to learn it and you know it. When you are busy suffering, you know that it is them who have the vehicle, who have the money. And I think with Banyankore now it is worse because 35 years of them in power, then they seem to have robbed everybody of anything. At least the other ones, it was 9 years. Now you multiply all this time. So they used to tell us that the northerners are bad, they are killers, they are evil, they even eat people. Imagine, and yet I was a lawyer, and yet there was Rwakasisi, there was Ruza Chirunda, there used to be Simanyi Mugwisa, there used to be Rangaranga, is she Rangaranga? There used to be those people, the Westerners, they were there, part of the team which was evil, but we were not seeing it. That's why I keep saying that God should open the eyes of your heart. Because if you are seeing with fresh eyes and listening with your earthly ears, you cannot see these things. So they used to say that. So now, and they used to say they are not educated. They are primitive. So now, when these fighters, freedom fighters from the western region, mainly constituted by Westerners and Baganda, who are perceived to be good human beings, who are perceived to be educated and knowledgeable, who are perceived to be good, when they took over power, what did you expect me to think? To think that, finally, the good people have come in. And so for me, when I embraced Stephen and went there in the struggle, I said we've been saying that the uneducated have been there. Now that I'm educated, now that I'm knowledgeable, I even belong to that group of good people. Let me also go there and play my part. So I went on the basis of that. And I really believe that we are going to do a good job, and that is the end of the suffering of Ugandans. Since we are going to be good, since we are educated, since we are human, we are going to institute a human-centered, kind, and good, nurturing leadership. That's what I went with. But alas, down the road, things changed and changed and changed and changed.
Doctor,
and here we are. So there is no way I could not have documented
That.
how the struggle was betrayed. You see, I'm not saying Matembe is betrayed. I'm saying the struggle.
Your struggle.
The struggle, not mine alone. Ugandan people's struggle, because Ugandans, the Ruwero people, they died. Everybody, you know, when I was departing with Museveni, when I parted with him in Chankwanzi in 2003, I told him, Your Excellency, if at that time in 1980, when you got out and contested for elections, when you came out as a young man with your mind, with your brains, with whatever you could manage, if Ugandans had listened to you and elected you to lead Uganda, we would not have had to see the skeletons of Ruwero. I said the skeletons of Ruwero would never have come. That suffering would not have been there, because you would have taken the position and you would have led Uganda like now you have led it. So I said, so now, for that reason, even right now, as you want to stay in power forever, there are young men and women who are like the way you were in 1980, who are ready, that if you hand them over power, we shall avoid another Ruwero. I told him, and that's when he got so angry and said, get out of my government, you fool, go. I don't want you. Hey, he said, I don't want you. I said, well, you don't want me, but I have told you. Now tell me, what is it that happened during Obote's time that is not happening now? What is it that happened during Amin's time that is not happening now? They say history repeats itself, but history does not repeat itself. It is those prayers of history, participants of history, who become fools and repeat the mistakes of the past. So in this book, I said I would have to document a book, because Museveni, incidentally, this book was God-breathed, because after I had written it, see, the struggle, the people of Uganda went to struggle and get themselves rid of dictatorship, suffering, misery, poverty, all those things they went to get rid of are all happening right now. Therefore, that's why I say the struggle was betrayed. Those who took power and those who remained in that power, and the young generations, the grandchildren of President Museveni, whom he's hailing, my grandchildren. If the grandchildren are the one in leadership, what is the grandfather doing? Why doesn't he rest and see the children, the grandchildren do the work? He's spoiling, has spoiled everything. So when I had finished my book and said the struggle for freedom and democracy betrayed, one lady rang me and said, surely, Miria, you are very brilliant, that the only word you have added on is betrayed. I said, on what? He said, on the title for Museveni's book, Mustard Seed. I went and picked it. President Museveni's Mustard Seed, the title of the book says, The Struggle for Freedom and Democracy in Uganda. And now, and knowing it, I was answering him and telling him, look, sir, that struggle has been betrayed, and you are the chief betrayer. The book online, it is on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. But as for these copies, we now have copies in Uganda Bookshop, and we have copies in PowerPoint. And of course, we used to have copies in Aristoc, but now because COVID, I had not dropped many more books there. But I'm sure after COVID, they will be there. But I want to appeal, especially the young people of my son's age, who are being deceived by what they see. They need to read this book and trace the history and see how now Uganda is in their courts. When shall the cycle of dictatorship, with the cycle of slavery, when will it stop? When will it stop? Because right now we are like the children of Israel who left for their journey to freedom, which was 11 days. But it took them 40 years moving around aimlessly in the desert because of the slave mentality. We must abandon slave mentality and reach a stage and say enough is enough of rounding the mountain. Let us break the camp and move forward.
Yes, that's Dr. Miria Matembe's story. We hope you learn a thing or two from her struggle for freedom, her struggle for justice, and why you should not actually give up when you feel your dream has been shattered. My name is Carlton Nakamia, and this is a reminder to subscribe and watch other upcoming episodes. See you next time.